Shown here is an 18 by 24 inch Linocut print, and in this video I will attempt to show how it was designed, drawn, cut, and printed. The emphasis in this sketch is on the design of shapes. I will pay more attention to details when I get into the cutting stage. Notice also that the sketch is flipped. This is because what is on the final printing plate will print on the paper as a mirrored image. So, once I have the pencil sketch worked out, I transfer it to a piece of 18 by 24 inch linoleum that has already been tinted with black India ink. I'm sorry that some of this stage of the process is missing. That's because my camera stopped working, and I couldn't stop working on the piece while waiting to get a working camera. Anyway, I did get the camera working and the rest of the process is pretty well documented. The bright white areas that you see is what has been cut, and the very light and pale lines is the transferred drawing. I'm using Japanese woodcut carving tools. A V-gouge and a U-gouge. Both are 1.0 mm. Now that I'm getting into the cutting, one thing I have to be very cautious of is cutting out too much. Once something has been cut away, it's very hard to repair, if it can be repaired at all. I feel comfortable cutting in these details without an accurate drawing to follow, because I have many years of experience drawing with scratchboard. I've drawn many trees on scratchboard that looks almost exactly like this Linocut. With that said, I still have to be cautious about what I cut. Here I'm using a large metal French curve to help in cutting long, curved, evenly spaced lines. Sometimes I have areas where I need more detail drawn in, to help guide my cutting. I use a light color pastel stick for this. The pastel could be sprayed with matte fixative to make sure the drawing doesn't get wiped off, but I'm just careful where I put my hands and that seems to work fine. While cutting these bushes, I keep in mind my light source. The imagined light is from a morning sunrise at about 9 o'clock. It's slightly higher than the horizon and from the left. Here I draw in some more details. This time I use a pastel pencil instead of a stick. The pencil helps to make more precise drawings, but it sometimes doesn't want to adhere to the lino. The detail is important here, so I figure the aggravation of the pencil not wanting to stick is worth dealing with. I will mention here that I was influenced with this piece by the work of the late, great, Ivan Earl. I discovered the work of Earl recently and noticed, in my opinion, that his style and mine had similarities. What I liked about his style is that he relied less on realistic depiction and more on imagination. And that is the direction I want to move in. Everything in this image is made up. Even the St. Louis skyline is made up. By that I mean, I drew the skyline from memory, and I wasn't worried about whether I had the exact shapes for the buildings and the arch. The drawing needs to be just accurate enough to be recognizable for what it is, but the important thing is the design of the shapes. Another thing I incorporated into this piece is the use of manipulated perspective. Much like was used in the early Renaissance. The artists of the early Renaissance hadn't worked out scientific perspective yet, so they weren't tied to the rules of perspective. They depicted things with whatever shape best described and communicated their thoughts. I also looked for ways to make things ambiguous. For instance, the area in the center could be seen as a river or a field.